This is the gospel this morning. After this, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. Some call it Tiberias. A huge crowd followed him, attracted by the miracles he had seen him do among the sick. When he got to the other side, he climbed a hill and sat down, surrounded by his disciples. It was nearly time for the feast of Passover, kept annually by the Jews. When Jesus looked out and saw a large crowd who had arrived, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy bread to feed these people?" He said this to stretch Philip's faith. He already knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 silver pieces wouldn't be enough to buy bread for each person to get a piece. One of the disciples, it was Andrew, brother to Simon Peter, said, "There's a little boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but that's a drop in the bucket for a crowd like this." Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." There was a nice carpet of green grass in this place. They sat down, about 5,000 of them. Then Jesus took the bread and, having given thanks, gave it to those who were seated. He did the same with the fish. All ate as much as they wanted. When the people had eaten their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the leftovers so nothing is wasted." They went to work and filled 12 large baskets with leftovers from the 5 barley loaves. The people realized that God was at work among them in what Jesus had done. They said, "This is the prophet for sure. God's prophet right here in Galilee." End of today's gospel.
Big discrepancy, but still, 4,000 is a lot of people. You ever thought about what it would take to feed 4,000 people? Can you imagine? Just for a simple meal. You'd have to have, I don't know, a couple semi-trailers worth of food, right? All right, so here we have this story. And I think it interesting in the scripture, you'll notice in the first part of the first paragraph, it said here, he asked the question, where can we buy the bread to feed these people? And he said this to stretch Philip's faith, because Jesus already knew what he was going to do. So why do you think that Jesus needed to stretch Philip's faith?
Well, we learn the strongest by our mistakes.
Oh, interesting. What else?
He knew the Starship Enterprise was in orbit.
You never know. Stranger things have happened. Why would he want to stretch Philip's faith?
Why not stretch Philip's faith?
Why not? Okay, good. Seal?
He was doubting. He doubted that this could be done.
Mm-hmm.
You only knew one way to do it. I mean, 200 gold pieces. It wouldn't be enough even that.
You only knew one way to do it. Okay, what else? Anything else? Great answers. Brilliant. Yes, sir, David.
How about the father that put the son up and was going to crucify him? He says, "I wanted to see how far you would go," and then they found a little lamb somewhere up for the sacrifice. That's in the Bible.
Interesting, yes. The story of putting up the son to be sacrificed.
That's right.
So wanting to test people's faith. Yes, sir.
It's probably a metaphor for all of us, because our faith oftentimes isn't strong enough to, when it comes to difficult times, to expect that God will provide and take care of it. And he probably was doing that with Philip as well.
It's quite a task before them, wasn't it? Harken back on your life. Think of the tasks that have been given or placed before you yourself. Have you ever found yourself looking at something and just not even willing to accept that this was something that was given to you, or this job was presented to you? Has that ever occurred to anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it can't be done. Who then, of those of you who have seen this before, have then lived through the solution? solution? Yeah, absolutely. We all have. We have all somehow gotten from point A to point B, even when we didn't think that point A was going to be something that we could possibly be dealt with. So Jesus tested Philip's faith. And he asked the question, how is this going to be done? All right, so Philip knew one way. 200 silver pieces wouldn't be enough to buy bread for each person to get a piece. But then it's interesting. Who provides an answer, though? Is it Jesus? No, it's Andrew. So, interesting. It's not Jesus who is actually providing the answer to the lesson. Andrew stands up. But what does Andrew say?
There's a little boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish.
Well, how do you like that answer, folks?
Still might say,
But he still says it's not enough to serve everybody.
He provides some answer. 5 barley loaves, 2 fish. And Andrew says, but that's a drop in the bucket. Okay. So now let's go back to your insurmountable situation that you may have been given. So what happens? Let's say, let's go back. Let's go to a church situation. All right. So here we have a church, and churches like ours all around the nation, both conservative and liberal, going through the issue of not filling the seats in the pews, of having people who are members or not members or not attending members. Okay, so there's our insurmountable problem. This is a test of faith for all I know. So what happens though when somebody steps forward and says, I don't know, I have a friend who I can bring with me, but that friend isn't going to fill the pews. Wouldn't that be a perfect answer, right? You know, we could see a little, maybe one of the kids, if we presented it to them on a Sunday morning and said, you know, there's not enough people in the pews here. What are we going to do about that? And maybe a child could say, well, my next door neighbor doesn't go to church. But then they might actually then say, but they're not going to fill all these seats. They're just going to fill one seat.
But it's a start.
But it's a start. It's a start, he says. Not only is it a start, but you know, somebody, even if they were the youngest of the children here, somebody stood up, like Andrew, and said, here's something. And what did Jesus then do with the 5 loaves and the 2 fish? He said a prayer over what he had. All right, so look further down in the scripture. After he said a prayer over what he had, what did he do?
Gave it out.
Gave it out.
passed it out, and
Passed it out.
everybody ate to their fill.
Everyone ate their fill. So taking this seemingly ridiculous solution, 5 loaves and 2 fish, that somebody said, all right, I'm going to try it. It's like the most ridiculous thing on earth. I'm going to feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And said, all right, I'm going to give that. What did God in Jesus then do? God in Jesus turned that little something into something so great. Only because if Andrew set forth that one thing, that one little thing, God turned it into something else. That, I think, is a great story for each and every one of us. We need to be open to even the most ridiculous or even the most, what's the word? Improbable solutions. Yes, sir.
Do you believe this happened?
I believe something happened.
No, that's not it.
Yes, I do.
If everyone was said that this actually happened in the story,
Historically, I don't know.
You should have more information.
I don't know.
I'm not saying anything about the beauty or the demonstration of the example. I'm just asking you, did this really happen?
Did this really happen? You explain to me what you mean by this. Did this really happen?
Well, that's very easy to do.
Okay?
Right now, I'm really speaking to you. You are listening to me. Those are the two realities.
Okay.
That's real. That's real. I mean, it's not even a matter of the beauty of the story. Nothing. But at the same time, I believe I can say realistic, actually, historic, this did not happen.
Okay.
Doesn't do not. Just appreciate it.
What do you mean when you say the beauty of the story?
Well, it's a great to tell events, acts of kindness, demonstrations, belief. It can qualify in all those areas. But as a time and place and exactitude, in my sense, appreciating all its beauty is that it probably did.
Okay. Cheryl in the back, what do you have to say?
I suspect that that was just the beginning of the beginning of the story. I think that what transpired more probably is that you have this child who is giving everything that he has, and then that passed out throughout the crowd, and they gave whatever they had and shared with these 5,000 people or 4,000 people, and that's how he fed everybody. It wasn't an actuality of, a miracle of him taking 4 loaves of bread and 2 fish and actually increasing that. But it was the people that did that, and that spread throughout the crowds, and that it was still food left over. That everybody helped everybody. Everybody shared with everybody. That's how
I think I've described before in the past about reading from the Bible and not being a literalist myself. And I think I probably have to explain that again and again, meaning that I don't think that things that happen in the Bible are literal. It's not like today. Today we can pick up a newspaper and we will read an article about an event that occurred yesterday. And we'll read, okay, this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened. And today, we're very much, that's very much, truth is equal to fact, or fact is equal to truth for us today, or observable phenomena, right? And of course, that's something that we say, okay, well then, if that's how we do things today, and that's how we explain everything today, then it must have always been that way. It must have always been that way. We do that, why wouldn't they do that? Well, the truth is that the Bible was a mishmash of different ways of speaking both history, metaphor, faith stories, stories of both joy and betrayal. Stories are of many different things in the Bible. And so we have to be mindful that things happen, and plus, let's face it, paper in those days did not come easily to write things down. They couldn't do reams. Okay, so, today now we're recording everything, like in a medical log. You open up your medical log, right? They have your temperature's taken every 30 minutes or something. Your heart rate is done. So there's all kinds of data. Well, not all kinds of data went into all these stories. Stories in the Bibles were simple, they were metaphor, there was some historical truth about it all. And so Jerry asked the question, what really happened? It really happened. So I, being both a teacher and a leader and a believer, I think something really happened. Now, what was reported that day, especially by John, which I'll say that I've said in the past, John has been problematic for me for many different reasons, not particularly for this story, but he was preaching to the believers. He was preaching to the choir, in other words. What does that statement mean? Preaching to the choir. Can somebody explain that? Exactly. The choir is already there, right? Every Sunday morning, they're going to be there here preaching no matter what. They're pretty strong folks, right? And that's oftentimes what John was doing more than anything else, is preaching to the choir. So there was some way to try to explain. And yes, you know what? There was a little bit of propaganda going on in here, the writer in John, trying to make sure that this story was going to be noticeable. And it's not just set just to John, but it was also Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They also were trying to convert people. They were trying to let folks understand. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But something happened in there that was unexplainable. Somebody's solution led to something greater than what they could possibly do on their own. So that's what happened.
Don't you think the fish and the bread were symbolic of what they were actually sharing?
Could have been.
They were actually sharing with 4,000 people something very small, which is symbolic and represented. The fish being Christianity.
Yeah.
Maybe others brought bread too.
What's that?
Maybe others brought bread as well.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Is the message that God will provide if you believe?
Ooh, it's a good question. It's a question. Is the message God will provide if you believe? That's a good question, because that's an interesting question.
Ken, a long, long time ago, when I was in Sunday school, like way back when, I had a very progressive Sunday school teacher. And he taught me that, when he taught the class, he told the class that the Bible was written by man for man. They took what God was saying and put it in words that they could believe. And there are metaphors, and I was taught that Eve represented all women, and Adam represented all men. And that when evil came into the earth. So this is another metaphor, and I exactly believe what she said, is that if you believe, it's a metaphor for if you believe, I will be there for you.
I think we need to be careful about saying, if you only believe, God will provide. We be very careful of that. Because we know that through history there have been many, many believers who also believed and were in a place of great and grave danger, and life ended for them. And we know that we struggle. That's the one very greatest thing we struggle for, of course, is life. I believe that, and I feel and I understand that the idea of if we believe God will provide, well, I think God provides for us the courage and the strength to have hope in yet another day, despite the troubles that may lay before us, or even for the abundance that might lie before us, because we have seen many people who have had abundance in their lives are a wreck. Have we not?
Mm-hmm.
We see it in the news all the time. So I think it's not a matter of if I believe, therefore I'm going to have this specific thing. What I believe I will be given the strength today in which to keep moving, despite all my doubts, despite all the things that are against me, despite all the people who are against me, despite the hurdles that lie before me. God will give me the strength. And God doesn't, and as I've understood also, I can't count on tomorrow's strength. All I know is that I have this moment right here, this day, and if I have faith, I will make it to the next step forward. I will make it to the next minute. You see, because without that, I just want to give up. I want to assume everything's going to go wrong. I won't put my whole body into it. I will not do all that I need to do. Or I may do that, but I may be as miserable a person on the earth that there is. And that is not life. I believe that these stories tell us, yes, if I believe, I will be given what I need to get forward, to move forward. And if I can get my head on the pillow, sleep, the next morning, that same relief, that same courage, that same strength to go forward will come to me yet again if I believe that there is something better. Or, like I said, even if I have abundance. Because when you have abundance, you got all kinds of people asking you for it, right? All of a sudden, everyone's your relative. So
Yes.
the same thing goes no matter what the situation, and faith is applicable to anybody in any situation. So, whatever happened on that day, and Jesus even talks a little bit of recycling and reusing here. He says, what does he say? Gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. Ecology, folks. Right? Sustainability. Jesus was long before his time. We know that already. Well, friends, thank you for your words. Thank you for the hard questions, because it is a hard thing. Why do these things exist? Why do they not sound like the newspaper reports of today? Because as Marcus Borg, who is somebody that many of us know, said that the Bible is filled with metaphors. And he says, some people just want to say, well, metaphors are a nice story, they're just poetry. He suggests this, that metaphors are poetry plus. Poetry plus. And that's a big thing for us to grasp hold of. My friends, I believe that we can do whatever we put our minds to if we believe in God's grace, God's strength, and God's courage will be delivered to us as it is needed. And I pray that we do so as a body of faith, as individuals of faith. And friends, know that you are beloved, and know that God's great strength is available to you this very moment with that kind of faith. Friends, let us now sing This Is My Father's World. Of course, turning to that thing, we know this song. We'll sing this, of course, twice.